Hello everybody, welcome back to Brothers in Air. Got the FLASHPUP again here with me. And like many of you, I've oftentimes, especially on some of my longer hunts and where my hunting spots, it's quite a distance, maybe even a few miles to get out there. So I've got a long distance where I'm just carrying my gun and I'm not actually hunting just yet. I'm just walking and traveling from point A to point B. And like I said, like many of you, I've oftentimes thought that it would be really nice if the FLASHPUP had some sling stud swivels in it so that I could sling the pup on my hunts. And so I've already taken out the two stock screws that hold the gun into the stock. So I'm going to go ahead and just slip the gun out and set it over here into this gun case on the foam here. And I've got to say that the FLASHPUP stock is actually the most fragile stock that I have ever had my hands on. This thing is really just it's really milled out in here, and this that's one of the reasons why it's so lightweight like it is. And the bulk of the wood, any real chunk of wood, you've got about a ½ inch in here where you could go with a swivel, and then you've got this portion here back here that's a good solid piece. So even though you've got some other options, there's really no way to get around installing a swivel stud into the rear of the gun here, unless you're going to get a sling that just kind of straps around the gun, and those are all right, but I don't really generally like the way they look on an air gun especially. It just seems to take away kind of from the beauty of it, I guess you could say. But so like I say, you don't absolutely you don't need to install absolutely a front stud, but you do have to install a rear stud here into the buttstock area no matter what, unless you're using that strap-on sling. So because we've got our accessory rail up here, you don't necessarily have to install a stud into the fore-end of the gun, because you've got other options that way, and I'll discuss that at the end of the video and show you a couple of those options. But I'm going to go ahead and throw a swivel into here anyhow, just because I thought it would be nice to have one on the fore-end of the gun. And then when I'm using my big flashlight that I've got that fits on my accessory rail, and it takes up the whole length of the rail pretty much. So then when I'm using that, I've even still got my sling stud in here, and I'm still able to sling the gun that way. So what I did after a lot of examination, and studying the stock to really decide how I wanted to do this and just what I wanted to do, what I did is I measured 2.5 inches, and I marked it with a little strip of tape, just for reference and to visually give me, just a visual reference of where the center of it is and everything, and then so I would know how far down to make my mark as well. So I put a little strip of tape, and I measured 2¼ inches from the toe. So from the actual toe, the wood, not from here, from the butt pad, but from the actual wood toe, I measured down 2¼ inches, and that's where I'm going to insert my, that's where I'm going to install my stud right there. So then what I did is just to map it out so I could visually see it and everything, and line everything up, make sure I'm not having the butt plate screws come into play and not getting too close to it. So I actually took a little strip of tape and just marked off where that butt plate screw is in there and just how deep it goes and everything. Like I said, just for visual reference, so I could see with my placement, just to get a real good idea of where I wanted to go with my stud. And then I also took a strip of tape and just ran it right here at a 90, off of this surface here where I'm going to be installing my stud. And I did that just also for a visual reference of where the stud's going to be going in and the direction of it. And then also, since I'm going to be hand drilling it, that'll also, when I'm drilling it, give me a visual reference to make sure that I'm going in, drilling my hole at the correct angle that I want to. So that's why I put this other little strip on the side, just to mark the path of the stud hole, you know. And then I did place another piece of tape over all of that, and place my mark, you know, my X for where I want my hole to be on that. And you want to place a piece of tape over it and get it, you know, press it down real nice and get it stuck on there real good. And that's just going to help to protect the finish around there, you know, and to help so your hole doesn't splinter out or any, you know, weird stuff like that that's going to cause it to look ugly. Or, you know, we want a nice clean hole and a nice clean cut in there. So this just helps you achieve that by taping over the area like that. So now for the fore end of the stock, all I did was take off the accessory rail. You know, it's just a couple of screws. I believe it's 2.5 millimeter Allen key. I popped it off and laid down a piece of tape onto here, and then I put it back on just so I could trace out where it actually is, because I wanted that on my tape and I wanted to visually see just where it seats on here and where the edges of it are, because I wanted to get my swivel stud as close to it as possible. So I measured up 1/4 of an inch from that, you know, where the accessory rail goes to. I measured 1/4 inch off of that, and that's where I'm going to place my hole and drill my hole for my stud that's going to go into the fore end here. So let's get to it. Let's get this thing viced up and drill some holes and get some studs in here. And then we can, you know, test it out, see how its functionability is and how it works out. I think it's going to definitely look cooler with a nice sling on here. And so I'm excited. So let's get to it. All right, so it probably looks kind of crazy, but I actually, when I went to put the stock into the vise, I decided against even using the vise. You know, I didn't want to squeeze the stock with the vise with any amount of pressure and hold it that way, just because, like I said, it's so fragile and them sides are so thin. I didn't want to take a chance of cracking it or just damaging it somehow that way. So what I did is I just took this gun rest and put that in the vise tight. And then I set the stock into the gun rest and used the butt plate, you know, the butt stock clamp here to fix it down tight into there. And then I took a bungee cord here and strapped it around like this, just to make sure that the top is attached here and held firm up against the rest, you know, so it can't come loose that way when I'm pushing into it down here. So let me get my drill, and I'm going to be installing a 3/4 inch wood screw stud into the butt plate, into the butt area here. So what that requires for the set that I'm using is a 5/32 drill bit. And what I did is I just marked the drill bit down at 1 inch so I could visually see. I don't want to go any deeper than 1 inch, so I marked the drill bit that way. And so now that our drill's set up, what I'm going to do is take this center punch, and this center punch is just rather than having to place it and whack it with a hammer, it's just spring loaded inside, so it kind of does the whacking for you, and all you've got to do is press it down and cock that spring and it inside, you know, kind of like your air gun. It's got like a hammer, so to speak, and that hammer lets loose and fires and cracks on the pin. So it's kind of cool, these ones here like this. But I'm just going to mark my hole and get kind of a you know, like a pilot hole set up, a nice little center hole for my drill to start in. And I'm gonna give it a few cranks and get a nice deep hole started. Not too deep, but you know, I want to have a nice start for my drill there. All right, so now I got my 5/32 drill bit, and let's go ahead and drill this hole. I'll line up my angle and everything, make sure we're centered. Got our hole in there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, what this is a number 9 3-point countersink. And I'm just going to countersink the hole slightly because I like my swivel studs to be, you know, with that plastic spacer and everything, I like it to be just recessed slightly. So, like I said, this is just a 3-point countersink, number 9 drill bit, and I'm going to countersink my hole a little bit with this here. You want to just make sure that you're going at a good 90 off of this stuff. That should be good. So I'm going to take my tape off right now since I don't need it on there anymore. And then also so I can closely examine my hole and see how we did here. And this is just masking tape, like painter's masking tape. You know, you don't want to use anything that's going to pull the finish right off of your gun or anything like that. But there we have it. Let's see if we can get a close-up of that hole there. So there's our hole for our rear stock stud. She's all set up and ready to go. So let's get it flipped over and we can put our hole into our fore-end. And I'm actually on the fore-end of the stock, rather than install a wood screw, go real far with this clamp here, make sure we can fit that in. Rather than go with a wood screw swivel stud for the fore-end, I'm actually going to go with a machine screw swivel stud. It's a 3/4 inch machine screw swivel stud, and it uses a knurled nut on the inside to hold it in there. And they've already got this whole channel milled out in here. You know, it's already countersunk and it's already recessed, so we don't have to worry about that at all. And so I just thought it would be better, you know, as to how fragile the stock is, and with the machine screw swivel stud in there, we just get a more secure, sturdy hold on the stock rather than using the shorter 1/2 inch wood screw swivel stud that came with the set that I purchased. So let's get this in here facing the other way. And I had just slipped a little piece of foam down in there to raise it up and help support it in there. And now what I'm going to do is just stick that foam into the stock here, and I'm going to use it to support it and brace it that way for when I'm pushing into it here and drilling. So let's get that up there. And now I'm going to tighten down these clamps here on the gun rest. These buttstock clamps, and I want to get them nice and tight and make sure that's in there good. And now I'm going to take my bungee and just strap it down here strap the top end of it down here like we did before. All right, that's rock solid in there, so that's not going nowhere. You want to make sure, however you do it, that you really have your stock secured down, you know, so it's not going nowhere. All right, so for that machine screw swivel, we've got to use, on the set that I got, it takes a 3/16 inch drill bit to drill the hole for that machine screw swivel stud. And that's going to be a through hole. So I'm going to drill all the way through, and I'm going to come all the way through into that milled out area there where they milled out and countersunk that whole area in the backside here, on the inside, I should say, of the stock. So you take my center punch and get my hole set up here. All right, we got a nice little starter punch going for our drill bit. Now let's get our through hole drilled with our 3/16 drill. What was it? Yeah, it is a 3/16 drill bit. But anyways, let's drill our through hole with the 3/16 here. And you just want to make sure that you're at a good 90 off of the surface that you're drilling. And I'm just going to go all the way through. So there we go. There was no need to mark the drill bit, you know, for depth or anything, because like I said, I'm just punching all the way through into that milled out area there. So now that we got our 3/16 hole drilled, I'm going to do the same thing that I did on the rear. And I'm going to take the 3-point number 9 countersink bit, and I'm just going to countersink this hole a little bit so that the stud, like I said for the back one, same thing, just so it's recessed just slightly, so that plastic spacer will be recessed in just a little bit there. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. And I'm going to go just a little bit further. All right, there we go. Now, what I'm also going to do is, there's a knurled nut that goes on the end of that machine screw, and that's what fixes it and holds it tight in the stock there. So what I'm also going to do is go on the inside there in that milled out area where my hole comes through, and I'm going to countersink that just slightly, just so my nut that goes on that machine stud, so that nut can recess just slightly in there, and then that knurled edge of the nut will be down in the wood so it can grab, you know, and that'll just help it seat in there and grab, so that when I'm tightening, it's not spinning at all or anything like that. So let me get this, well, I suppose we should take a close look at our hole here. Let me get this tape off of here. Now, I'm not going to worry about that little piece of tape. I'll get it off of there later. But let me take the other camera here and give you a close-up look. So there's our hole for our in our fore-end. That's going to be our fore-end swivel stud. As you can see, it's a through hole because we're going to use the machine screw swivel stud that uses a knurled nut on the other side. Alright, so now like I said, I'm just going to flip the stock around here and get this in here as a spacer again. And I'm not even going to bother with the bungee on this because it doesn't take much pressure at all. And I just know I don't need to hold it quite as secure as I was, you know, so I'm not going to hold down the top with the bungee here. So now I'm going to take my number 9 3-point countersink drill bit, and I'm going to countersink that hole that's inside of there, that hole that came through in our milled area. Like I said, I'm going to countersink it just a little bit so that knurled nut has a little bit of a seat to get on into, and so those knurls on the edge of the nut can grab onto the wood a little bit. Alright, let's go here. Go just a little deeper. Alright, there we go. Now let me give you another close-up look of the hole we just did on the countersink and on the inside of the stock there where that hole is. So there you go. There's the back side down on the inside of the stock. You can see we marked our hole real nice. Everything looks to be centered real nice. And like I said, I countersunk that hole just a little bit there just to give that nut a seat to seat on into, and something for those knurls in that nut to grab a hold of so it doesn't spin when you tighten her. Alright, well, there you go. We got our holes drilled, and now we can go ahead and get set up on the workbench here and install our swivels into the gun. So let's get to it. I'm excited to get a sling up onto here and you know, just to see how it feels and everything. So let's get to it here. Alright, let's get these studs put in here and get the accessory rail put back on. And the studs I'm using are a set of the Outdoor Connection. That's the brand of them. And like I had mentioned, I'm going to use the 3/4 inch wood screw stud for the back buttstock. And I'm going to use the 3/4 inch machine screw with the knurled nut for the fore-end stud. So let me get my hardware out here. Alright, and I'm going to do this, I'm going to do the fore-end first here. So remember, I put a hole into on the inside here into this recessed area, this countersunk area on the inside of the stock. I countersunk my hole just a little bit so that knurled nut would seat down in there a little bit, and then that knurled edge on the nut would you know, have that wood right on the edge to grab onto and bite into just a little bit, just to prevent any slipping or anything as it's tightening down. But so let me get the nut in there. And I'm just going to press it in all the way till it seats down flat into the, you know, into the countersink there, till it's all the way down and in there, which it is. And now we can take our 3/4 inch machine screw, and I've already got the plastic spacer on there, and we'll stick it right in here and get that threading into our nut. And I'm just going to go by hand till it gets fairly tight. And now I'm just going to use this Allen key through the center of it there and just spin it in that way. Just this last little half turn here. So I think that's pretty good there. All right, that looks good. That looks real nice. So there's our fore-end stud in there. And you can see it's you can see the nut there, the knurled nut with the stud screw thread sticking up out and through it there in that recessed area. So now let's get this wood screw stud into the buttstock area here. And like I said, I used the 3/4 inch wood screw stud. And another reason, and not only do I like the studs to be countersunk just slightly, just so that plastic washer's recessed and they're down countersunk, you know, they're recessed just a little bit. Another thing is, whenever you're installing a stud onto a curved area like this gun has, you know, on the buttstock here on the bottom, it's so narrow, you know, and it comes up and it's a curve where you're drilling into that curve, you know. So you don't have a flat seat for your plastic spacer and your stud to seat up against, you know, because it's curved. So by countersinking it like we did, that gives that plastic spacer and everything just a really flat seat to seat on. So not only will it be recessed, and I think it looks better that way, but it's also kind of necessary here so that you can have a flat seat for everything. So let's get this stud into here. And I'm just going to, as long as it's not too tight, I'm just going to thread it in by hand if I can. And then I'll just use that Allen key on that last little bit just to snug it down in there. I think probably one more turn maybe. Gosh darn, that hurt my fingers. All right, that looks good. So there you have it. There's our rear stud in there in the buttstock there. So, all right, I'm excited. I'm gonna get this sucker all wiped down and get the gun wiped down and back into here fixed down with my two screws, and then we'll get a sling on here and see how it feels and see how it does. And like I said, also discuss a couple other options besides actually installing a stud into the fore end of the stock, if you didn't want to do that like I did. So, all right, we'll see you in just a minute. Man, I got so excited there for a second, I forgot all about my accessory rail here. So let's get this accessory rail put back on too. And I wanted to see how it looks myself with the rail on there, and I also wanted to be able to show you as well before I get to fixing a sling on and stuff like that. So let's get this put back on here. Oh, that was the one I was using for those studs. So yeah, like I was right, it's a 2.5 millimeter Allen key for these here. Get them snug down real tight. All right, there we go. Not bad. I really like it. So there you go. That's how it looks with the rail on there. And even just like this, I think it looks cool. I like the stud placement, and I think it's really going to add to the gun's value, to be honest, you know. And I'm really going to appreciate having a sling on this thing. So let's get to it and throw a sling onto this sucker. Like I said, I'll be back in a minute for real this time. Yeah, this is going to work just great in the field. I can't wait to get out and take it on a hunt, you know, now with a sling. I like it. Just make sure if you get a sling that you know, being that it's a bullpup and that your studs are so close together, make sure that you get a sling with enough adjustability to get it short enough, because a lot of slings they won't go short enough to accommodate, you know, a lot of bullpups, you know, as far as the length goes. And you don't want just, you know, an immense amount of extra on there, you know, extra strap. So, but yeah, this is great, man. This is going to be awesome. I can't wait. This is just going to be perfect out in the field. And you know, the way it fits, the trigger handle fits right there into my armpit, you know. So it's a real snug fit, feels real nice, and like I said, I think this is going to work out in the field just beautifully. Oh yeah, that's a good length on my strap too, you know, as far as a nice stable triangle there. Yeah, I can't wait. It's going to be awesome. So there it goes with the sling on there. Alright, let's talk about some other options here. Alright, so like I said, I wanted to present you also with a couple of other options. Once you know, if you did decide to go ahead and do this, and you installed your rear stud, you know, your swivel stud into your rear, into your buttstock, once you did that, like I said, it's not absolutely necessary to install another stud here. And I'll tell you what your other options could be. I put my bipod back on, and most bipods come, you know, this style of bipod, you know, these bigger metal ones like this. Most of these style of bipods like this, they come with you know, this little area down here, this little thing that comes and protrudes down, and it's got two through holes through it, and its purpose is actually, them holes are there so that you can attach a sling, you know, a swivel sling, right to the bottom of your bipod. And this is actually the bipod that I use on this gun. So I knew that I didn't have to install this stud into the fore end here, but I wanted to anyways. I wanted to have one there just in case. And so you've got that option rather than a fore end stud. You can use this type of a bipod, and like I said, it comes with a little hole, and you can attach a sling that way to the front. And then another thing you can do, you know, I already have this thing here. What this is a bipod adapter. You know, just Picatinny to a bipod adapter, and all it does is fix onto your rail, and it's actually made to attach a bipod. You know, when a bipod doesn't have an adapter for the Picatinny rail, and you've just got the style of bipod that needs a swivel stud to be able to mount up on there. So that would be one option if you had one of these laying around, or even if you wanted to order one, because you know, I put it on the gun, and I think it just looks better than the other style would look anyhow, because it kind of takes up the whole length of the rail, and it just almost looks like it, you know, like it was made to be on there. It's just a perfect length, and I think it looks cool. So that's one option there. And then you can also go ahead and order just an actual Picatinny adapter for a sling stud. You know, most of them come and they're real small like this. You know, it's just like a little cube, and it just fits right up onto your rail. You know, Picatinny adapter with a sling stud sticking out of the end of it for your stud. So you do have a few other options besides actually drilling and installing a stud into the fore end of the gun. But like I said, I put one in there anyways because I wanted one there. But I did want to bring those options to light just in case anybody didn't think of that, or you know, maybe you just have different preference or whatever. So all right, that's it, man. That's the sling stud install on the HATSAN FLASHPUP. And I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it was helpful, and I hope me taking that leap would be enough encouragement for any of you that were kind of on the fence about doing it to you know, work up the courage and do it. It's not hard. You know, I've done others besides this one, but it's not hard. You know, just take your time and really map things out and think about what you're doing. And make sure you use appropriate tools, you know, and really sharp tools, you know. Use really new sharp drills and things like that, so you can make real nice clean cuts and do a real nice job, you know. And like I say, you just take your time, and I think that anybody really, you know, can do this as long as you've got the tools on hand, and like I said, you use the proper tools. So that's it. Happy shooting. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you on the next video. Thanks for watching.